Solo Leveling by Chu Gong. Chapter 11 Part 1 The Potential Jackpot. Jinho's squad had a total of 2 dungeons scheduled on this day, and there was quite a distance between them. Sangin and Kitchell kept in frequent contact as each waited at a dungeon for the squad to arrive in order to confirm with their own eyes if their hunch was correct. It's still pretty chilly. Sangin bought a cup of coffee from a nearby vending machine. He'd been waiting for Jinho's team for an hour now, but his anticipation was somehow beating out his boredom. It had been a while since his heart had raced this fast. If I'm right, he's the first super rookie to come along in ages, and an S rank to boot. Sangin had secured the title of department manager at a young age, and it was all thanks to his intuition. In fact, he had played a large role in raising White Tiger to its current status as a prominent guild. That same intuition was now telling him that Jin Woo-sung might be able to take the White Tiger Guild to the next level. People will think I've gone insane if I say that, though. After all, according to his records, Jin Woo was still officially an E-rank hunter. Things weren't always what they appeared to be, though, and Sangin wouldn't have been who he was today if that wasn't true. He was watching the gate with the eyes of a hawk when, ring. It was a call from Kitchell. Hey, Kitchell. Sir, Jinho Yu's squad just arrived. Okay, stay calm and keep an eye on them, then report back their every move. Yes, sir. Wait. Huh? Head manager and... The voice on the other end of the line sounded odd. Did that idiot get caught? Sangin started feeling anxious. What's wrong? Talk to me. You were right, sir. What? His heart beat faster. Only 2 people, Jinho and Jin Woo, are entering the gate. Of course, since this is all a test for Jin Woo. As expected, Songmin's hunch was spot on. His intuition had never failed him when it came to situations like this. Nice. He pumped his fist. While you guys take your sweet time, the White Tiger Guild can make a move. Jin Woo-sung will be ours. Because that's how Sangin and the second administration team rolled. While Sangin was distracted by his daydreams of victory, Kitchell's voice continued spilling through the phone. So what should I do now, sir? Should I join you? No, keep monitoring them. Pardon? But we've already confirmed your suspicions. I'm curious about their clear time. I'd like to know how many hours it'll take them to clear a C-rank dungeon. Even A-rank hunters need more than a couple of hours if they go in by themselves, don't they? Do you have something better to do? Of course not, sir. I just thought you might get bored by yourself, so I thought I'd ask. That was why Sangin liked Kitchell. He had a lightning-quick ability to adapt to situations. Don't worry about me, and keep your eyes peeled for when they leave the dungeon. Understood. I'll have my phone with me at all times, so call me right away if something happens. Yes, sir. After Sangin finished relaying his orders and hung up, he suddenly realized just how hungry he was. Rumble. Guess I was too focused on work. He'd been so preoccupied with waiting for Jin Woo that he hadn't eaten all day, and it was already past lunchtime. He hadn't been able to leave his position because he'd had no idea when Jinho's squad would arrive. Now that he could relax, he looked around for a place to eat before heading into a convenience store. It's not like I'm trying to save money, but even though there wasn't anyone around to judge him, he felt uncomfortable dining in a restaurant alone. After some deliberation, he decided on instant ramen from the store. He poured hot water into the ramen container and waited 3 minutes for everything to cook. He just snapped his wooden chopsticks apart when ring. Oh, who the hell is calling me when I'm trying to eat? A familiar name lit up his phone's screen. Second in command? Damn you, Kitchell. Sang-in took the call and snapped. You couldn't wait to call me again? I'm sorry, sir, but what? If you called me for nothing, you're eating instant ramen for lunch for a week. Sir, they've exited the gate. Sang-min, who at that moment had raised some noodles to his mouth, froze like a video on pause. What? Jinho and Jinwoo exited the dungeon, and the squad is now getting ready to leave. He hadn't misheard anything. He rushed to check the time. It's only been 30 minutes. Did they give up on the raid? No, the gate is closing. None of this made any sense. Despite the different levels of difficulty among C-rank dungeons, it wasn't possible for a single person to clear a dungeon in 30 minutes. Check again! Are you sure the gate is closing? Yes, I'm sure. Would you like me to send you a video? No, that's fine. Sang-in hung up the phone and stared blankly ahead. What would take an A-rank hunter 2 hours to clear, Jinwoo had finished in 30 minutes. Never mind B-rank. Based on empirical data, he had to be higher than an A-rank. Sang-in had hit the proverbial jackpot. Boss, do you have somewhere else to be? No, why? I've never seen you hunt so fast. Jinho was absolutely awestruck. He'd already known Jinwoo was strong, but the Phenom Hunter had been on a completely different level today. What Jinho didn't know was that the results had been inevitable. Jinwoo suppressed a laugh. It's because the magic beasts this time were werewolves. Title: Wolf Assassin. A title given to those skilled at hunting wolves. When battling an animal-type monster, all abilities will increase by 40%. With the enemies being werewolves, the Wolf Assassin buff had naturally kicked in. His high level plus the buff meant that mere C-rank magic beasts hadn't stood a chance. Yeek! Whimper! Wyan! At the rate Jinwoo had torn through them, even 10 extra hands wouldn't have been enough to help Jinho collect the essence stones from the beast's remains. Jinho ended up drinking 5 bottles of healing potion in this dungeon alone. The concoctions were so filling that he groaned multiple times about how he wouldn't need to eat lunch. That's that, but Jinwoo looked up. He felt like someone was watching him for a while now. I don't think it's a hunter, since I can't sense mana. His eyes swept the surrounding area, but nothing caught his attention. If he wanted to, he could track down the interloper, but it would take a while due to the lack of animosity or hostility. It could have been nothing, and sure enough, the presence soon vanished. What's wrong, boss? Nothing. Let's head out. The clock was ticking, and there was no time to waste. Jinwoo took one last quick look around, and then got in the front passenger seat. Jinwoo didn't feel the gaze when entering or exiting the second dungeon. Am I being paranoid? Either way, he was glad it wasn't a big deal. While he was lost in his thoughts, Jinho approached and hung his head. I'm sorry, boss. The other gates are too far, so this is the last one for today. That's fine. Nothing to be sorry about. There was still plenty of time before sunset, but they'd been on such a roll closing down the gates in this particular area that they had to call it quits for the day. Good work, everyone. You did all the work, Chief. See you tomorrow. Good work. Jinwoo and Jinho got in the van after seeing off the other members. I'll take you home, boss. Jinho had become his trusty chauffeur at some point. He looked completely at home behind the wheel, like this was what he was meant to do. Jinwoo gazed at him with pity. He has to play chauffeur even though he's a little rich boy, just because he wants to try his hand at being a guild master. Jinho caught Jinwoo staring at him as he accelerated and chirped with a bright smile. Huh? Is there something on my face, boss? Nope. Jinwoo quickly turned his eyes ahead, as if he hadn't been caught. Something occurred to him, and he pulled out his phone to check the time. It's 4:46. He had a while before he needed to be home, and luckily, he had something else to do. It was around here, wasn't it? If memory served. Jin-woo turned to his driver. "Hey, Jin-ho?" "Yes, boss," Jin-ho replied as he skillfully turned the wheel and smoothly maneuvered the van around a corner. "Let's go to the Myri department store." "Myri department store?" Jin-ho was puzzled by the odd request. "Yeah, sure, it's right over there, but is something wrong, boss? You've been acting odd all day. You know, you've gotten pretty chatty recently." At those words, Jin-ho whipped his head to the front and sat ramrod straight. "I'll get you there at the speed of light, boss. Hold on to your seat." With his shift in attitude, Jin-ho drove straight to the destination without braking once, and the pair soon arrived. Screech. The vehicle came to a stop in front of the Grand Myri department store, which was located in downtown Seoul. TMP. As Jin-woo got out of the van, Jin-ho also disembarked and walked over to the hunter, who stood there quietly. "Our guild has to have offices in a building like this, right, boss?" he asked half-jokingly, gazing up at the structure. Alas, he received no answer. Feeling something was off, Jin-ho urgently looked to his side. "Huh?" Jin-woo was already gone. "Boss?" Search as he might, he couldn't find a trace of Jin-woo in the area. "Boss?" As the boss has been defeated, the dungeon will now revert to its original state. Leveled up twice in the department store instance dungeon. Jin-woo's footsteps were light on his way home. That particular instance dungeon key had come from a mystery box a while back and could be used only at the Myri department store. He had been waiting for a good opportunity to go and had ended up clearing it today while he had some free time. "Boss?" Jin-ho's bewildered face while looking for him was hilarious no matter how many times Jin-woo pictured it. At that moment, his phone rang. Rang. He checked the caller ID, but it wasn't a number he recognized. Who? When he was in high school, all his free time had been devoted to raising his baby sister, filling their sickly mother's shoes, and he'd started working as a hunter right after graduation. Meaning, his network of acquaintances was rather limited. "I don't usually get calls from unknown numbers." His hesitation was momentary, however, and he decided to answer the call. "Hello? Hello? Is this Jin-woo-sung?" The man on the other end of the line had a clear voice. Jin-woo hung up as soon as he heard it. Click. Based on past experience, 99% of the time, this kind of call is either a telemarketer or a loan shark. As he went to pocket his phone, it rang again. Rang. It was the same number. Huh? So it's not a telemarketer? Telemarketers had quotas to fill, so they rarely called back someone who hung up on them, as it was better to call as many numbers as possible. Besides, they also knew it'd be a waste of time to try again. That means this person actually needs to talk to me. Jin-woo answered the phone properly this time. "Yes, this is Jin-woo-sung." "Oh, excellent. I thought I dialed the wrong number, since the call cut off." Uh-huh. Jin-woo debated for 2 seconds if he should apologize and explain that he'd assumed the man was a telemarketer or a loan shark, but he stopped, admitting that would be even ruder. After a brief silence, the salesman, no, the man with a salesman's voice, continued. "Oh right, I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm Sangmanin with the White Tiger Guild." Jin-woo stopped in his tracks. "The White Tiger Guild is calling me." He racked his brain, but couldn't think of a reason why they might reach out to him. The only connection he could remember was when they'd helped the association with the double dungeon incident, but it's a bit late to be asking me about that. Jinwoo wasn't the type of person who could restrain his curiosity, so before Sang-in could say anything, Jinwoo beat him to the punch. May I ask why the White Tiger Guild is calling me? It's a little difficult to talk about this over the phone, so could we meet in person? Instead of ordering him around, this man was willing to accommodate him. So Jinwoo couldn't think of a valid reason to refuse. It also so happened that he would be available the day after tomorrow. Didn't Jinho say he had to attend some kind of family thing? Jinho had apologized for breaking their streak of daily raids, as his entire family was required to attend an important event. An important event. Maybe Jinwoo watched too much TV, because he imagined it to be some rich family gathering in a fancy hotel banquet hall. In any case, it meant he was free that day. I have time on Thursday. I was wondering, are you free right now? Right now? Jinwoo checked the time. His phone read 8 p.m. It's almost 8 o'clock. I'm close by. I just need a moment of your time. Close by? I'm in a cafe nearby. Sang-in told him the name of the cafe, which sounded very familiar. Not only did he often pass it by because it was across the street from his apartment building, but it was also where Jinho had first made his proposal. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. They know my address. Hunters' addresses weren't readily available on the association website. The only details made public were their names and ranks. Hunters could choose to add their personal information, but Jinwoo hadn't included a single way to contact him in his profile. Despite this, not only did they know his number, but they were also waiting near his home. That meant they had done their research. Now that I think about it, things were starting to add up. Today I kept feeling like someone was watching me, so I'm assuming that was also one of your people? Jinwoo's voice deepened. At his accusation, the man readily offered a polite apology. Sorry if we made you uncomfortable. We simply wished to verify the truth. We wouldn't have bothered contacting you if we wanted to cause trouble. I guarantee you'll appreciate what I have to say. Jinwoo considered a bit before answering. I'll be there soon. Hunters, Reapers, Knights, Fame, and us, White Tiger. I'm sure you've at least heard of them. Sang-in listed off the top 5 guilds in South Korea. Among them, the Hunters Guild was number 1, but it hadn't always been the top guild. Originally, that title had belonged to the Reapers Guild, but when the White Tiger Guild broke off from the Reapers, they'd lost their standing. After that, the student had surpassed the teacher. The fact that White Tiger had not only gained independence, but also surpassed the Reapers was old news these days. And now, the White Tiger Guild was gunning for the number 1 spot that had once been held by the Reapers. Sang-in was fully convinced that Jinwoo Sung, the man sitting across from him, would be a great help in their quest to reclaim their former glory. Sang-in handed Jinwoo his business card. Sang-in, White Tiger Guild's 2nd Administration Team Manager. I'm Sang-in, the manager of the 2nd Administration Team under the White Tiger Guild, one of the top 5 guilds in the nation. I'm in charge of recruiting and managing new hunters. Any other hunter would have given him a proper 90-degree bow and struck up a conversation even before receiving his business card. Unless they were an S or a rank, joining the White Tiger Guild was every hunter's dream. Truthfully, Sang-in expected the same reaction from Jinwoo, but he was different from all the others. He didn't miss a beat and calmly asked, "Why is someone from the White Tiger Guild looking me up?" Sang-in was shocked. To think he wasn't intimidated even after hearing the name White Tiger. They'd exchanged only a few words so far, but Sang-in had a feeling that recruiting Jinwoo wouldn't be easy. On the other hand, he still very much wanted to secure this up-and-coming hunter. After all, there was nothing wrong with an ambitious new talent. If you think about it, he has to have at least some ambition to be of any use. Sangin strengthened his resolve. I'll be straight with you. We would like to recruit you, Hunter Sung. We are prepared to double whatever Eugene Construction has promised you. He offered Jin Woo a pleasant smile. It looked like Eugene Construction was still testing out Jin Woo's capabilities. How stupid. The speed with which he could clear a C-rank dungeon, the marketing potential of a reawakened hunter, the ease with which he was handling himself in this situation, and so on. There was no reason to test him any longer. Since they don't know how valuable he is, they probably haven't offered him the right price. Sangin was confident White Tiger could double whatever Eugene Construction had put on the table, or more. But Jinwoo's gaze turned icy. How did you know? WH what? Jinwoo's unexpected response caused Sangin to falter, even with all his experience as a seasoned recruiter. How did you know to find me? It occurred to Sangin that if words had a weight, these would have crushed him. What is this overwhelming pressure? The man in front of him seemed to regard him as an enemy. After all, Sangin had both tailed him and contacted him out of the blue for a meeting. It was understandable that Jin Woo might consider him hostile. Sangin rushed to explain. We didn't spy on you on purpose. We happened to receive word that someone was rapidly clearing C-rank dungeons in our area, and your name came up when we looked into the matter. Jin Woo reined in his glare. I see. Contrary to what Jin Woo feared, it didn't seem like this man had investigated him because he discovered Jin Woo's secret. Jin Woo had appeared on his radar because of the speed with which he'd been clearing dungeons. It doesn't look like he's malicious. Jin Woo's expression relaxed slightly, and the tension between the two dissipated a bit. Phew. Sangin was relieved, but the conversation hadn't made any progress. He needed to find a way to make a favorable impression. Nothing better than sharing information for getting on someone's good side. Sangin was a master of recruitment. He gathered himself and reassumed his professional smile. It's supposed to be confidential information, but we're already aware that Chairman Myung Han-yu is looking to form a new guild. Jin Woo neither confirmed nor denied this. Sangmin continued, I knew as soon as I saw you together with his youngest son, Jinho. We figured they were trying to recruit you, a reawakened hunter, for their guild. As Jin Woo suspected, Sangin thought he was a reawakened hunter. Nice to know that that's what they think. It meant that Jin Woo didn't have to make up a story. Sangin quickly added, We were hoping to talk to you before you signed a contract with Eugene, so we contacted you like this in a rush. I apologize again if we overstepped any boundaries. It's okay. It would have been a different story if there were any ill intentions, but given the sincerity of the apology, Jin Woo decided there was no need to make a big fuss. More importantly, he needed to figure out how to handle this. Sangmin interrupted his train of thought. Have you already signed a contract with Eugene Construction? Jin Woo's hesitation seemed to have given him that impression. When Jin Woo shook his head, Sangmin's slightly anxious expression immediately brightened. Great. He's a free agent then? Here was an opportunity to recruit a highly skilled hunter who could clear a C-rank dungeon all by himself in 30 minutes. Technically, he had gone in with another D-ranker, but to someone B rank or higher, he was probably more like deadweight. What if Jin Woo joins the White Tiger Guild and gets reevaluated as an A rank or better? Sangin was having a hard time suppressing his giddiness. Jin Woo scratched his chin. Seems like he's counting his chickens before they've hatched. Thinking about it, White Tiger wasn't so bad. It was one of the top 5 guilds and had potential to become #1. But Jin Woo had no intention of joining a guild now. My net worth will increase as my level goes up. Plus, it might be a while until he could do this, or maybe never, but what if, one day, I can clear B and A rank dungeons by myself the way I clear C rank dungeons now? The earnings from high rank dungeons were beyond imagination. They were the reason large guilds were able to grow into entities rivaling megacorporations. Highly valuable essence stones, remnants of magic beasts, minerals excavated from dungeons, rune stones, artifacts. Untold sums of money flowed from those dungeons. If he could obtain and keep all that wealth for himself, why share it with a guild? If I keep leveling up, it's definitely not impossible. That was why joining up seemed a bit premature. The corners of Jinwoo's mouth started to lift. Sangin beamed, thinking this was a positive response. Have you come to a decision? You promised me double, yes? That's right. If you believe what they offered doesn't reflect your talents, we could possibly raise your compensation. Then how much is the White Tiger Guild's building worth? Songmin's expression froze for a second. Is he doubting our financial liquidity? No, this wasn't the time to be indignant. Here was a chance to flex for the guild. There was no need to withhold the information and not tell him. This was an opportunity. Sangmin proudly answered. The appraised value is about 50 billion won. White Tiger doesn't use the entire building, but the guild does own it. Initially, White Tiger had been renting out office space, but they eventually bought the property after establishing themselves. It took only a year to do so. It was a prime example of how much money a large guild made. Had Jinwoo asked, Sangin was ready to tell him the guild's gross and net profits, but Jinwoo's casual response rendered him speechless. Can you give me the building? Excuse me? Songmin's eyes widened. Positive that he'd misheard, Sangmin asked. What did you say? Jinwoo patiently explained. Eugene has promised me a 30 billion won building, you see. If White Tiger's building is only 50 billion won, that's less than double, but considering the substantial value, I'd be willing to overlook it. Did you say 30 billion won? Songmin's mouth was agape. Jinwoo had 4 years of experience, but that career was as an E-rank hunter. He'd become noteworthy only in recent weeks. That meant it was likely that his second awakening hadn't been much earlier. How powerful was he now for Chairman Yu, a man well known for his business acumen, to promise him 30 billion won even before his reevaluation? Wait, is he bluffing because there's no way I can verify this offer? Sangin gazed at Jinwoo suspiciously. As he did, Jinwoo took out his phone and quickly dialed someone as if having read Songmin's mind. Ring. Click. Yes, boss? It was late, and the cafe was quiet, but Jinwoo purposefully turned the volume on his phone all the way up. Let me ask you something, Jinho. Of course. Ask me anything, boss. Jinho? Jinho Yu? Sangin swallowed nervously. Is he going to tell Jinho about our discussion? His assumptions were misguided, though, and Jinwoo brought up something unexpected. The building you said you would give me, what's it worth again? Its market value is about 30 billion won, but it'll jump once construction is completed and our guild moves in, boss. Oh, right. If you need a notarized document, I can fax it to you now. Hold on. Jinwoo covered the receiver with his hand so Jinho couldn't hear and asked Sangin, if you're having a hard time believing this, would you like to talk to him yourself? Sweating profusely, Sangin shook his head. No, that's okay. I gotta go. You got it, boss. Songmin's eyes were wild, a complete reversal from before the phone call. Eugene Construction promised him 30 billion won as a signing bonus even before forming the guild? And the son addresses him with absolute respect? Sangin was stunned. The thing is, negotiating large sums of money like that is above my pay grade, so to speak. But if you give me some time, I can discuss this with upper manage. Jin Woo cut him off. Then I believe we're done here. Songmin's head drooped, and he was at a loss for words. He analyzed the source of his failure. Ultimately, I lacked information. He had been unsuccessful because he had rushed things. He'd made rash, risky moves because he couldn't contain his excitement at such a huge catch. If only he had done more research on Eugene Construction's proposal and proceeded, as usual, with support from the guild. I need to first report this to the guild master. If Chairman Yu valued Jin Woo at 30 billion won, then he could well be worth 50 billion or maybe even 100 billion. It might not be too late. With the guild's help, I should be able to dig up more information about him and push harder. Jin Woo interrupted his thoughts. Let me just ask you one thing. Sang-in raised his head and realized that Jin Woo's cordial demeanor had vanished. Despite the fact that it was a warm spring night, the air around them suddenly turned chilly. Gulp. As Sang-in swallowed nervously, Jin Woo lowered his voice. How many people know about me? Oh, only me for now. I was rushing to try and recruit you as soon as possible, so I didn't have time to report to upper management. In truth, there was one other person who was aware. Kitchell, Songmin's subordinate and right-hand man. Sang-in figured that this might upset Jin Woo, so decided to keep Kitchell a secret, just in case. But Jin Woo growled. Let's not lie to each other out of mutual respect, agreed? Sang-in was taken aback. What? Did he look into us before our meeting? If that was the case, lying would just make their relationship unnecessarily worse than it already was. Sang-in didn't even want to consider that possibility. I guess I have no choice but to tell him the truth. The relationship between a hunter and a guild was similar to that of a celebrity and an agent. Even if a hunter wasn't willing to enter into a contract at this point in time, it was important to maintain a good relationship, because one never knew what the future may hold. Avoid conflict with hunters as much as possible. That was the golden rule of the second administration team. To that end, Sang-min decided to confess. To be perfectly honest, one of my subordinates does know about you. That is the truth. Jin Woo nodded. I knew it. It was just as he'd suspected. Research, surveillance, and reaching out to Jin Woo. This was too much work for one person. The decisive clue was the timing of when Sang-min had contacted him. His call had come as soon as Jin Woo entered the vicinity of his house. Someone was probably watching me and informed him the minute they saw me. After all, Sang-min would have wanted to talk to Jin Woo as soon as possible while making sure Jinho remained clueless. At least this wasn't official White Tiger Guild business. That much was clear from Songmin's reaction to the 50 billion one. He'd panicked when presented with a figure higher than he had authority to clear. If he was going through the proper channels, he would have at least feigned a call to upper management, regardless of whether the amount was possible or not. Taking all that into account, Jin Woo had suspected a small team of 2 or 3 people, and Sang-in had now personally confirmed it to be 2. Thank goodness. Jin Woo didn't want things to get complicated, but 2 people, he could easily keep the situation under control. It was obvious they would keep pestering him if he left things as is, so he decided that a small warning was in order. Jin Woo spoke up. I'll be honest as well. I've already rejected Eugen's offer. Sang-in was floored by this bombshell. What? In that instant, Jin Woo vanished from sight. Huh? Sang-in sprang to his feet. He quickly spun around but couldn't spot Jin Woo anywhere. What's going on? Did he move so fast that I couldn't see him? Caught off guard, Sangmin belatedly realized that a hand had settled on his shoulder. NGH! A chill ran down his spine. Don't turn around! The voice came from his side. Jinwoo had been sitting across from Sangmin one moment and had silently slipped behind him the next. As stealth, Sangmin broke into a cold sweat. Is he mad at me? Hunters were monsters. Sangmin knew this well from working so closely with them. That was why he always treated them with the utmost respect. Was the surveillance entailing the tipping point? I should have requested backup from the guild before I came. But it's not like I could have arranged security when I don't know his rank. Sangmin's mind was spinning, and his heart was pounding. The sound of his own breath was deafening. Jinwoo murmured, "Please sit down, nice and slowly. I'd hate to give you a heart attack." Sangmin hesitantly nodded. "I think it's too late for that." He did as requested, and Jinwoo reappeared, sliding into the seat next to him. Although Sangmin understood why Jinwoo would say those words. Earlier, the look in Jinwoo's eyes, as he asked his single question, had made his blood run cold. If Sangmin had met that same gaze directly in this kind of situation, his heart might have stopped altogether. Is this his way of being considerate? Still, there was no arguing the fact that Jinwoo was a scary man. Jinwoo continued, "The reason I rejected Yujin's offer is because I'm not interested in joining a guild at this time." Both men kept their eyes straight ahead instead of facing each other as they conversed. "ISC. Also," Jinwoo paused for a beat, "I would rather not have anyone else knowing about me." It was a simple request. He didn't want to join a guild, and he wanted to keep a low profile. Sangmin understood immediately, but there was still one thing he was curious about. If I may ask, then why are you working with Jinho? He's helping me with a personal matter. No one else knew about my reawakening, and I think of him as a trustworthy friend, so I asked for his help. Speaking of, the weight of Jinwoo's words seemed to grow heavier. If I find there's talk about me behind my back, may I assume that you or your subordinate will take full responsibility, Managerin? Even though Jinwoo had already removed his hand, the threat exerted an even heavier pressure on Sangmin's shoulder. This isn't a bluff. Sangmin couldn't explain how he knew this, but he was utterly certain that Jinwoo could do plenty of damage if he wanted to. My gut feelings about people are almost always right. Jinwoo had escaped several horrific life and death situations. How did the saying go? What happens in a dungeon stays in a dungeon. Who knows what Jinwoo had gotten up to in there? And he has the stealth skill to boot. The stealth skill could be a major pain. Skill holders could commit virtually any crime and get away scot-free if they were careful enough. Security cameras, guards, and alarm systems were all useless. A bead of sweat rolled down Sangmin's forehead. I had no idea he could use stealth. Outstanding abilities and a rare skill. No wonder Eugene had offered him 30 billion. Not like they'd make a deal unless they knew they'd profit from it. Ba-dump. Even though he was frightened, Sangmin's heart was beating with excitement. He managed to get out a reply. "Rest assured, I will keep your secret. I'll make sure Kitchell, my subordinate, is also on the same page." Keeping all this on the down low was preferable to Sangmin anyway. A free agent of his aptitude? There was no reason to spread information and risk competitors finding out about Jinwoo, and it wouldn't hurt to be able to take all the credit for discovering him. Truth be told, I have to admit that the biggest reason is because I don't want him as an enemy. I'll take your word for it, Managerin. With that, Jinwoo's presence disappeared from the seat next to him. Sangmin peered at his surroundings. The cafe around him had a peaceful, cozy vibe, and Sangmin felt like he'd been abruptly dropped into another world. He was rendered speechless, and could only press a hand against his racing heart to try and calm down. Just then, Kitchell burst into the cafe. He had been watching Sang-in and Jin-woo through the window, and had dashed to the scene as soon as Jin-woo vanished. "Manager in!" Sang-in looked deathly pale, so Kitchell worriedly asked, "Sir, what happened? Did negotiations fall through?" Songmin's trembling hands fished out a cigarette and brought it to his lips. "Kitchell, I think this is an even bigger deal than we thought." They had to recruit this man no matter what. His mind was consumed by that single thought. Fortunately, it looked like the opportunity was still there. He was brought back to earth when Kitchell lightly grabbed his wrist. Sir!" Sang-in looked at the younger man just as he was about to light up. Kitchell glanced around and then whispered cautiously, "This is a non-smoking area." Sang-min crushed the cigarette in his fist. "Seriously,